The girl who got lost and found her voice. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about something that every English learner experiences at some point on their journey. It's a story about fear, about mistakes, and about that terrifying moment when you realize that all your studying hasn't prepared you for the real world. But more importantly, it's a story about courage, about connection, and about finding your voice when you thought you had lost it. This is the story of a girl who studied English for 5 years, traveled to London, got completely lost, and discovered what fluency really means. So grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let me tell you a story that might just change the way you think about learning English forever. She had studied English for 5 years. 5 years of grammar exercises, vocabulary lists, and pronunciation drills. She could pass any test you put in front of her. She knew the difference between present perfect and past simple like the back of her hand. She could conjugate irregular verbs in her sleep. She had certificates and diplomas that proved she was an advanced English speaker. But when she landed in London, everything fell apart. The airport was absolute chaos. Signs everywhere in that fast, unfamiliar font. Announcements blasting over loudspeakers in an accent she couldn't quite catch. People rushing past her in every direction, speaking so quickly that their words blurred together like a river of sound. She stood in the middle of the terminal, frozen like a statue, her suitcase in one hand and her passport in the other. Her mind went completely blank. The words she had memorized for years had vanished like smoke in the wind. She couldn't understand the announcements. She couldn't read the signs fast enough. She felt like a child in a world of giants, small and invisible, and terribly, terribly lost. She found her hostel eventually. It took 3 hours of pointing at maps and nodding at things she didn't understand, but she made it. She collapsed onto her bed and cried. Not loud dramatic sobs, but quiet tears of exhaustion and fear. She had worked so hard. She had studied so much. And yet here she was, unable to do something as simple as find her way from an airport. The real nightmare, however, began the next morning. She decided to explore the city. Just a short walk, she told herself. Just to see Big Ben. Just to get some fresh air and clear her head. She took the tube, got off at a station that looked familiar from her guidebook, and started walking with a confidence she didn't quite feel. The streets twisted and turned in ways that didn't make sense. The buildings all looked exactly the same, rows of red brick and white windows that seemed to repeat themselves endlessly. After 30 minutes of walking, she realized something terrible. She was completely lost. She had no idea where she was. She had no map because she'd left it at the hostel. Her phone battery was dying, showing that ominous red line that meant she had maybe 10 minutes left. And she had absolutely no idea how to ask for directions because her mind was completely empty. Her heart started pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her palms were sweaty. She felt like she couldn't breathe. She wanted to cry right there in the middle of the street. She saw a woman walking towards her and opened her mouth to speak. Nothing came out. Just a dry, terrified silence. The woman passed by without even noticing her. She tried again with a man in a suit. She managed to whisper, "Excuse me, I'm lost," in a voice so small it barely existed above the noise of the city. The man looked at her impatiently, clearly in a hurry. "Speak up, love, I can't hear you," he said, his accent thick and unfamiliar. She froze. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. He gave her an annoyed look and walked away, leaving her standing there feeling like the biggest failure in the world. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to go back to Brazil, back to her room, back to her textbooks where English was safe and predictable and didn't require her to actually speak. But that moment, right there in the middle of that busy London street, changed everything. She realized she had two choices. She could stay lost and scared, waiting for someone to save her, hoping that a miracle would happen and somehow she'd find her way back. Or she could use every single word she had ever learned, every phrase she had ever practiced, every grammar rule she had ever memorized, and save herself. She took a deep breath, the kind of breath that fills your lungs all the way to the bottom and makes you feel like you're about to do something brave. She found a street sign and memorized the name, repeating it over and over in her head so she wouldn't forget. She walked into a small shop, the kind with a bell on the door and the smell of fresh bread, and approached the cashier. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to hold them together. Her voice was trembling like a leaf in the wind. But she spoke. "Excuse me," she said, slowly and clearly, making sure each word was pronounced correctly. "I am lost. Can you please tell me how to get to the river?" The cashier, a kind-looking woman with warm eyes, smiled at her. "Of course, love," she said, speaking slowly and clearly so she could understand. "Turn left at the next street, walk straight for about 10 minutes, and you'll see it. Can't miss it." Simple words. Simple directions. And she understood every single one. She felt tears welling up in her eyes, not tears of fear this time, but tears of pure, overwhelming relief. She smiled back, said thank you in the most genuine voice she had ever used, and walked out of that shop feeling like she had just climbed a mountain. Because she had done it. She had spoken. She had been understood. She had communicated in a real situation, with a real person, in real English. That day, she walked for hours. She made more mistakes than she could count. She asked for directions 4 more times. She pronounced words wrong. She mixed up her tenses. She said, I am going to the museum, when she actually meant I am going to the park. She accidentally asked someone where the bathroom was when she wanted to find the bath. But she didn't care about being perfect anymore. Every mistake taught her something new. Every conversation gave her more confidence. By the end of the day, she had visited 3 museums, eaten real fish and chips from a place that wrapped it in newspaper, and made friends with a group of Spanish tourists who spoke even less English than she did. They communicated through hand gestures, through laughter, through the few words they all knew. It was clumsy and imperfect, and absolutely beautiful. She walked back to her hostel that night with blisters on her feet and a smile on her face that she couldn't wipe off. She didn't return to her hostel until midnight. She collapsed on her bed, exhausted but exhilarated, her legs aching and her mind buzzing with everything that had happened. She pulled out her journal and wrote something she would never forget. Today I got lost, she wrote. But I found my voice. My English isn't perfect. My grammar is terrible. My pronunciation is still a complete mess. But I spoke. I was understood. And I survived. That's all fluency really is. It's not about perfection. It's about connection. It's about being brave enough to try, even when you're terrified. She thought about all those years of studying, all those hours of grammar exercises, all those tests she had passed with flying colors. None of that had prepared her for this moment. What had prepared her was the courage to try, the willingness to be wrong, the decision to speak anyway, even when she was scared out of her mind. The next day, she went to a pub. It was a traditional English pub with dark wood and dim lighting and the sound of glasses clinking. She ordered a drink with more confidence than she had felt yesterday, and then she did something that terrified her even more. She sat down next to a group of locals. They were laughing about something, their voices loud and full of joy. She didn't understand half of what they said. Their accent was thick, their words blurred together like they were speaking a different language entirely. But she caught a few phrases. She laughed when they laughed, even if she didn't fully understand why. She nodded when they nodded. And then, something magical happened. One of them turned to her and asked, "Where are you from?" She understood every word, without translating in her head, without panicking, without freezing up. She answered, "I'm from Brazil, I'm learning English." They smiled at her, not with pity or impatience, but with genuine warmth and interest. They welcomed her into their conversation. They didn't care about her mistakes. They didn't correct her grammar. They didn't judge her accent. They just talked to her like she was a person, not a student, not a test taker, not a failure. Simple things. Movies and music and the weather. It was the most beautiful conversation of her life. She realized something profound that night. She had been thinking about English all wrong. For 5 years, she had been treating it like a test, something to be passed or failed, something to be perfected, something to be graded and judged. But language isn't a test. It's a bridge. It's a tool for connection. It's the way we say, I see you, I hear you, and I want to understand you. And you don't need perfect grammar to do that. You don't need a flawless accent. You don't need to know every word in the dictionary. You just need the courage to try. You just need to be willing to be imperfect. You just need to speak even when you're not ready, even when you're scared, even when every part of you wants to stay silent. She stayed in London for 6 more months. She got a job working in a cafe, serving coffee to tourists and locals alike. She made mistakes every single day. She gave someone black coffee when they had asked for latte. She accidentally told a customer that his sandwich was delicious, when she meant to say it was delivered. She once mixed up the words for chicken and kitchen and told a customer that the kitchen was very delicious. They both laughed about it. She learned to laugh at herself, to embrace her mistakes instead of fearing them. She practiced with everyone who walked through the door, learning new words and phrases from every conversation. Her English grew, not through studying or memorizing, but through living, through connecting, through being human. On her last day in London, she took the same tube she had taken on her first terrifying day. She got off at the same station where she had felt so lost and confused. She walked the same streets where she had cried and panicked and wanted to give up. But this time, everything was different. She wasn't lost. She knew exactly where she was going. She walked to the river and sat on the same bench where she had sat that first day, watching the sunset over the water. She thought about that scared girl who had arrived 6 months earlier, terrified and silent and convinced she was a failure. She barely recognized her. That girl had been so afraid of making mistakes that she had made the biggest mistake of all. She had stayed silent. She had let fear win. She had convinced herself that she wasn't good enough to speak. She pulled out her phone and called her mother back in Brazil. "I'm coming home next week," she said in English, just for the fun of it. "But I'm not the same person who left." Her mother laughed on the other end of the line. "You sound different," she said. "You sound happy." She was happy, not because she had become fluent. She hadn't. She still made mistakes. She still had an accent. She still sometimes froze up in conversations. Not because she was perfect. She wasn't. Not because she had achieved some impossible standard of perfection. But because she had finally understood what fluency really means. It doesn't mean speaking without mistakes. It means having the courage to speak anyway. It doesn't mean understanding every word. It means being willing to ask for clarification. It doesn't mean sounding like a native speaker. It means sounding like yourself, in a new language, with all your quirks and imperfections and beautiful uniqueness. She went back home and started teaching English to other Brazilians who were just as scared as she had been. She told them her story. She showed them her mistakes. She taught them the most important lesson she had ever learned. "You already know more English than you think you do," she would say. "The only thing holding you back is fear. Not your vocabulary, not your grammar, not your accent. Fear. Fear of making mistakes. Fear of being judged. Fear of sounding stupid. Let go of it. Speak. Make mistakes. Laugh at yourself. And watch how quickly you improve. Watch how your confidence grows. Watch how the world opens up to you." She still makes mistakes. She still has an accent. She still gets nervous before important conversations. But she speaks anyway, because she knows that every conversation is a gift. Every mistake is a step forward. Every word, even the wrong one, is better than silence. Silence doesn't teach you anything. Silence doesn't connect you to anyone. Silence just keeps you stuck in the same place, feeling the same fear, believing the same lies about yourself. And so it is for you. You may be sitting at home right now, frustrated with your English. You may be thinking that you'll never learn. You may be comparing yourself to others and feeling like you're falling behind. You may be convinced that everyone else is better than you, that everyone else finds this easy, that everyone else was born with some gift that you just don't have. But listen to me carefully. That is a lie. You are exactly where you need to be. You are in the middle of your journey, not at the end of it. The words you struggle to remember are just words you haven't practiced enough yet. The grammar you can't quite master is just grammar you haven't used in real conversations yet. The accent you worry about is just the sound of your courage. You're not failing, you're learning. And learning takes time. And patience. And more courage than you think you have. So I have a challenge for you today. I want you to do something that scares you. I want you to say one thing in English to someone. Just one thing. It doesn't have to be profound. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be something. Ask a question. Give an opinion. Tell a joke, even if it's a bad one. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. It doesn't matter if they don't understand the first time. The only thing that matters is that you try. The only thing that matters is that you speak. Because every time you try, you're building a muscle. Every time you speak, you're creating a connection. Every time you fail, you're learning something new. Every time you embarrass yourself, you're getting a little bit braver. That's how growth happens. Not in big leaps, but in tiny steps. Not in perfect moments, but in messy, imperfect, human moments. The girl who got lost and found herself didn't become fluent overnight. She became fluent one conversation at a time, one mistake at a time, one embarrassing moment at a time. And she wouldn't trade any of those moments for the world. Because each one made her braver. Each one made her stronger. Each one brought her closer to the person she wanted to become. That person is waiting for you too. The confident speaker. The fearless traveler. The person who connects with anyone, anywhere, in any language. That person is already inside you, just waiting for you to let them out. You just need to take that first step. You just need to get a little lost, and in the process, find yourself. You just need to speak even when you're scared. Especially when you're scared. Your journey to fluency starts now. Not when you feel ready, because you'll never feel ready. Not when you know every word, because you'll never know every word. Not when your accent is perfect, because your accent is part of who you are. It starts now with whatever you have, with wherever you are, with whoever you're talking to. Speak. Make mistakes. Learn. Grow. And one day, you'll look back at this moment and smile at how far you've come. Just like that girl in London. Just like millions of others who have walked this path before you. You can do this. You are doing this. And you will succeed. Because you're not just learning a language. You're learning courage. You're learning connection. You're learning to be human. I want you to go out there and get lost. Not physically, but metaphorically. Get lost in a conversation. Get lost in a movie without subtitles. Get lost in a book that's a little too hard for you. Get lost in the beautiful chaos of learning something new. And when you find your way back, you'll realize that you've found something even more valuable. You've found your voice. That's all for today's video. I really hope this story inspired you to keep going, even when things get hard. Remember, every expert was once a beginner. Every fluent speaker was once a terrified student. The only thing that matters is that you speak. Because every time you try, you're building a muscle. Every time you speak, you're creating a connection. Every time you fail, you're learning something new. Every time you embarrass yourself, you're getting a little bit braver. That's how growth happens. Not in big leaps, but in tiny steps. Not in perfect moments, but in messy, imperfect, human moments. The girl who got lost and found herself didn't become fluent overnight. She became fluent one conversation at a time, one mistake at a time, one embarrassing moment at a time. And she wouldn't trade any of those moments for the world. Because each one made her braver. Each one made her stronger. Each one brought her closer to the person she wanted to become. That person is waiting for you too. The confident speaker. The fearless traveler. The person who connects with anyone, anywhere, in any language. That person is already inside you, just waiting for you to let them out. You just need to take that first step. You just need to get a little lost, and in the process, find yourself. You just need to speak even when you're scared. Especially when you're scared. Your journey to fluency starts now. Not when you feel ready, because you'll never feel ready. Not when you know every word, because you'll never know every word. Not when your accent is perfect, because your accent is part of who you are. It starts now with whatever you have, with wherever you are, with whoever you're talking to. Speak. Make mistakes. Learn. Grow. And one day, you'll look back at this moment and smile at how far you've come. Just like that girl in London. Just like millions of others who have walked this path before you. You can do this. You are doing this. And you will succeed. Because you're not just learning a language. You're learning courage. You're learning connection. You're learning to be human. I want you to go out there and get lost. Not physically, but metaphorically. Get lost in a conversation. Get lost in a movie without subtitles. Get lost in a book that's a little too hard for you. Get lost in the beautiful chaos of learning something new. And when you find your way back, you'll realize that you've found something even more valuable. You've found your voice. That's all for today's video. I really hope this story inspired you to keep going, even when things get hard. Remember, every expert was once a beginner. Every fluent speaker was once a terrified student.